There are more ways than one if you want to solve a quadratic equations, but in this video, we are going to do that by extracting square roots. So ano munang alam natin sa quadratic equations bago tayo magsimula? Well, naaral natin previously that quadratic equations are equations that have the highest degree of 2. So let's say meron kang equation x squared minus 2x equals 3 halimbawa. As long as yung highest exponent mo is 2, ang tawag mo sa expression or sa equation na ito ay quadratic equation. Agad-agad. Doesn't matter kung ano yung basis, anong variables ang present, anong numerical coefficient ang present, anong constant ang present. As long as the highest exponent or ang tawag natin sa polynomial ay degree is 2, quadratic na agad ang tawag natin sa equation na yun. That's what we know so far about quadratic equations. How about extracting square roots? Well, let's say we are asked to find the square root of 16. Siyempre, maglalagay ka ng radical sign. This is the radical sign. Hindi siya division symbol, hindi siya long division symbol. Madalas malalaman mo yung pinagkaiba nun kapag mayroong buntot na maliit dito sa part na to. Of course, meron kang radicand. Yun yung number na hinahanapan mo ng root. We call that the radicand. Then the index. Yun yung number na nandito sa singit. Well, kapag walang nakalagay, ibig sabihin may default na 2. Kaya square root. Kasi yun yung default, kaya hindi na natin ilalagay. Well, minsan 3 yan. Ibig sabihin you're asked to find the cube root. Minsan 4, minsan 5. Pero ang idea basically is anong number yung kapag minultiply mo sa sarili niya, ang magiging sagot ay itong radicand mo. Itong nasa ilalim ng radical sign. So in this example's case, 16. The square root of 16, ano daw yung number na kapag minultiply mo sa sarili niya, magiging 16. The answer is, of course, 4. Because 4 times 4 will give you 16. Ibig sabihin, the square root of 16 is 4. So that's what we know so far about quadratic equations and extracting square roots. Now let's try using this process, using extracting square roots, in trying to solve quadratic equations. So I have here a few examples. First example natin, we're asked to solve this quadratic equation, x squared equals 36. Simpleng-simple lang siya. So kapag sinabi natin sa math na solve, basically you're looking for an unknown value na madalas naman nire-represent ng variables. So in this example's case, itong variable x. So solving for this quadratic equation also means solving for x. Solving for x also means isolating x on either side of the equation. So kailangan mag-isa lang siya, wala siyang ibang kasama. Walang kasamang exponent, walang kasamang numerical coefficient, walang kasamang denominator, and all that. In this example's case, ang kasama niya lang, yung problema lang natin is yung exponent na 2. So ano daw? Yung number, na kapag in-square ko, ang sagot ay 36. Well, kahit hindi na ako gumamit ng ibang algebraic process, may isip ko na agad na ang sagot dyan ay 6. Dahil kapag plinag-in ko siya dun sa x, lagay ko siya sa parentheses. Pag plinag-in ko siya sa x, alam ko na ang magiging sagot ay 36. So tama, hinahanap kong sagot. Pero paano ko yung gagawin kung halimbawang mahirap isipin kung ano yung value, ano yung unknown value? Well, you can use algebra every time. To do that, kailangan mo lang i-extract ang root. Ginagamit na natin yung term, i-extract ang root. Ng alin? Nung x. Kasi siya yung naka-raise sa square, sa 2. Paano ko i-extract yon? You simply put that, the whole thing, under the radical sign. That's how you extract the root. You put the radicand under the radical sign. Yung hahanapan mo ng root. Kaya lang, may mahalagang bagay kang dapat tandaan. Kung ano man yung gagawin mo sa isang side ng equation, this is an equation right here. Kung ano man yung gagawin mo sa isang side, dapat gagawin mo rin sa kabila. Para manatili yung kanyang overall value. Kasi ang sabi dito sa statement, equal sila. So kapag in-extract ko yung root ng kabila, dapat ganun din sa kabila para manatiling equal sila hanggang mahanap ko yung hinahanap ko. Lagyan ko ng equal sign. Kapag nag-extract ka ng root ng isang value na naka-raise sa 2, it's basically the same thing as canceling the square and the radical sign. So ano na lang matitira sa'yo? Yung radicand, which is x. Hindi nakasaming exponent kasi na-cancel out siya dito. Kabilang side naman ng equation, square root daw ng 36. Alam na natin yan. Nagawa natin kanina, which is 6. So, solving quadratic equations by extracting square root can be as simple as this. Pero minsan, meron pang ibang process na kailangan pagdaanan, kagaya na nasa example number 2. On this example, we are asked to solve for this quadratic equation t squared minus 64 equals 0. Now, kanina variable x, ngayon variable t, huwag kang kabahan, huwag kang matakot. Kahit anong variable yung gamitin, as long as quadratic equation yan, pasok yan dito sa ginagawa natin. As long as yung highest degree is 2. So, we need to solve for the value of t. Kung gusto nating masolve itong quadratic equation na to. How are we going to do that? We can think of a number na kapag minultiply mo sa sarili niya, kasi naka-raise sa 2, tapos minus mo yung 64, ay magiging 0. Pwede mong gawin yon, trial and error, isa-isahin mo yung mga number na papasok sa isip mo, or maybe you can use algebra. Use what you know. So to solve for t is the same as isolating t on either side of the equation. Dapat mag-isa lang siya, wala siyang kasama, kagaya ng ginawa natin dito. Dito sa example 2, ang dami nating medyo marami tayong problema. Merong exponent na 2, tapos meron pang negative 64. Merong minus 64 dito. So kailangan ko silang alisin dyan, one by one. And what I like to do is to start with the constant. Siya muna yung alisin ko. Meron tayong minus 64 dyan, at para mawala siya dyan, we need to subtract 64. Kung iisipin, negative 64, add 64 rather. Kasi kung mag-add ka ng 64 dyan, itong negative 64 mo, magiging 0. So, makaka-cancel out yan. And then, kagaya ng ginawa mo sa example 1, kung ano yung gagawin mo sa isang side ng equation, gagawin mo rin sa kabila para manatili yung equal value. So, kung nag-add ka ng 64 on one side, dapat mag-add ka rin ng 64 sa kabila. So, on the right side of the equal sign, meron 0 plus 64. Meron kang 64. Sa kabila naman, na-cancel out na yung 64, yung minus 64, so meron ka na lang t squared. Now, this looks familiar. Kagaya na siya ng example number 1. Para mawala yung exponent na 2, i-extract ko yung root. Which means, ilagay ko siya sa ilalim ng radical sign. Gagawin ko yon sa kaparehong side ng equal sign ng equation para maging balanse pa rin siya hanggang sa huli. Squaring a squared number is the same as just taking the base. So, kung ano man yung base ng exponent, siya na lang yung matitira. While on the other hand, sa kabilang side naman, the square root of 64 is basically the number na kapag minultiply mo sa sarili niya, magiging 64. Ang sagot doon, of course, is 8. Because 8 times 8 is 64. Now, let's move on to example number 3. Example number 3, medyo mas mukha na siyang komplikado. Merong constant, may exponent, tapos meron pang numerical coefficient si variable s. But don't worry, kagaya ng mga nagawa mo kanina, magagawa rin natin tong number 3. We need to solve for this quadratic equation, which means we need to solve for the value of s. Ano daw yung value na kapag ni-raise mo sa 2, minultiply mo sa 2, minus mo sa 98, minus mo si 98 ay magiging 0. Again, you can do trial and error kung marami kang time, pero kung wala, use algebra, use what you know. Let's start by removing 98 on this side, yung minus 98. And we can do that by adding 98. Kasi negative 98 plus 98 is 0. So, wala ka ng problema sa 98. Kaya lang tandaan na nag-add ka sa isang side, gagawin mo rin yun sa kabila para manatiling equal yung value. So, sa right side, you have 98 and then on the left side, you still have 2s squared. Nawala na yung 98 kasi na-cancel out. Now, you need to worry about two things. The numerical coefficient of 2 and the exponent, which is also 2. Ano yung dapat kong unang alisin? Again, pwedeng kahit sino yung mauna. Pwedeng alisin mo muna yung square root, mag-put ka agad ng radical sign, ilagay mo agad sila sa ilalim ng radical sign, or maybe you can start with something more simple. Alisin muna natin yung numerical coefficient na 2. To do that, simpleng-simple lang, kailangan mong i-undo itong expression na to. What I mean by undoing, if this is 2s squared, ibig sabihin din yan, it's the same thing as 2 multiplied by s squared or s times s. Tama ba? Kaya siya naging 2s squared kasi minultiply si 2 kay s squared. Para ma-undo yan, kailangan mo lang gawin yung kabaligtaran ng multiplication, which is division. So, para mawala dun si 2, si numerical coefficient na 2, if this is 2 multiplied by s squared, I need to divide by 2. Bakit 2? Kasi yun yung gusto mong mawala. Kung gusto kong maalis si 2 dito, divide ko siya sa sarili niya. Because anything divided by itself is 1. Bakit ko siya ika-cancel out? Kasi 1 multiplied by anything is still the number itself. So kahit hindi mo na siya isulat, ang ilagay mo na lang is yung s squared. Kaya lang hindi ka pa tapos kasi mahalagang tandaan na kung anong ginawa mo sa isang side, ganun din dapat sa kabila. Nag-divide tayo ng 2, ganun din yung gagawin natin sa kabilang side. So what is 98 divided by 2? That will be 49. Meron ka na lang isang problema. Goal is to isolate s, kaso meron pa siyang exponent na 2. So, kailangan mawala si 2, kagaya ng mga nagawa natin sa unang dalawang example, ilagay siya sa ilalim ng radical sign. That's what we mean by extracting the square root. Maka-cancel yun. May matitirang s. And then, sa kabilang side, gawin din natin yun. Extract din natin yung root. Ano yung number na kapag minultiply sa sarili magiging 49? That will be 7. Let's have a few more examples. On our fourth example, we are asked to find the solution to this quadratic equation, x squared equals 9. So, parang ang simple tingnan, no? Ano yung number na kapag minultiply sa sarili? Ano yung number na kapag ni-raise sa 2 magiging 9? Alam na agad natin na 3. Because 3 squared is 9. Or, pwede mong gawin yun algebraically using your knowledge about algebra. X squared equals 9. Extract ko yung root para mawala yung exponent na 2. Meron ka na lang x. And then, ano yung number na pag minultiply sa sarili magiging 9? That is 3. On our fifth example, now this one is a little bit trickier. R squared equals 0. Ano yung number na kapag minultiply mo sa sarili niya magiging 0? Now, baka ma-intimidate ka kasi 0 na yan. Sa mga naunang example, constant, may value. Pero dito wag ka matakot. Isipin mo lang yung idea na ano yung number, yung unknown value na kapag ni-raise mo sa 2, minultiply mo sa sarili niya, ay magiging 0. So, try muna natin. Trial and error. Pwede kayang 1? 1 squared, hindi pwede. Kasi 1 times 1 is 1. So, hindi 0. Hindi siya yung hinahanap natin. Lalong hindi pwedeng lumaki sa 1 kasi lalong dapat tataas na yung hinahanap natin. How about 0? 0 squared. 0 times 0, anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So, we found the value. The value of r, the unknown value, is 0. Pwede mong itry ang algebra. R squared equals 0. Extract mo yung root. Do that for both sides para equal pa rin siya hanggang sa huli. Ma-cancel out yung square. Matitira si r, and then the square root of 0, kagaya ng nagawa natin kanina, is 0. In our sixth example, we have that w squared equals, this is an equal sign, w squared equals negative 9. Basically, it's asking for a number that if you multiply to itself, will be negative 9. Isip muna tayo. Trial and error. Well, ang alam lang natin is if I multiply 3 by itself, magiging 9. Kaso, hindi negative. What I'm looking for is a number that if I raise to 2, if I multiply by itself, will be negative 9. Wala tayong maisip na ibang number. Try na natin gamitin yung algebra. W squared equals negative 9. Let's extract the square root. Extract the square. Para sa both sides, mawawala yan. Meron kang W. And then, again, ang hirap mag-isip ng square root of negative 9. Ano yung number na kapag minultiply sa sarili, magiging 9? Kagaya ng ginawa natin sa trial and error, 3 times 3 is not positive 9, not negative 9. So maybe, there's no solution to this equation. Siguro walang kahit na anong number na kapag ni-raise mo sa 2, multiply mo sa sarili niya ay magiging negative 9. Simply because there are no roots or solutions to the square root of any negative number. That's a very important property that you need to remember. Ang square root ng kahit na anong negative number ay imaginary. Now, that's a new term, a new word, an imaginary number. Na bakit siya bago? Kasi hindi pa natin siya naaral before at believe me, matagal pa bago mo siya mapag-aralan. This applies to some powerful areas of math, maybe complex analysis. The imaginary numbers. So, ibig sabihin, itong equation na to, so far, para sa nalalaman natin at sa mga aralin natin sa nalalapit na future ay walang solution. Example 4, sobrang basic. Example 5, na-intimidate tayo sa 0. And then, yung example 6, wala tayong nakuhang solution. These examples remind me of some of the most important, all of the more important concepts that we need to remember. We are trying to solve quadratic equations by extracting square roots. Recall that any quadratic equation can be written as x squared equals k. Paano natin yan masasolve? Sabi natin kanina, there are more ways than one. But if you want to extract the square root, ano-ano yung dapat nating tandaan? Number 1, if k is greater than 0, then x squared equals k has two real solutions or roots. Ano ibig sabihin nito? If k, this is k right here, yun yung value na makuha mo matapos mong i-multiply si x sa sarili niya. If k raw is greater than 0, or this is the same thing as saying if k is positive, kasi lahat ng number na mas malaki sa 0 ay positive number. So if k is positive, then x squared equals k, or your quadratic equation, has two real solutions or roots. Yung sagot can be called as a solution or a root. Ano daw yun? X can be positive or negative the square root of k. Balikan natin yung example 4 kanina. Sa example 4, ang k natin ay positive. At ang sabi sa property na nabasa natin, kapag positive daw ang k, yung solution mo, dalawa. You have two real solutions. Isang positive, isang negative. Paano nangyari yun? Mahalaga na tandaan na hindi lang si 3 ang number na kapag minultiply ko sa sarili niya, magiging 9. Check natin ha. 3 times 3 is 9. Correct. Tama yan. But in the same way, negative 3 multiplied by negative 3 is also positive 9. Bakit? Because if we are multiplying integers with the same sign, with like signs, palaging positive yung product. So kahit negative pa yan, basta parehas silang negative, positive din yung sagot. So hindi lang pala positive 3 ang sagot dito, pati si negative 3, which means yung sagot natin dito kulang. Dagdagan natin ng plus and minus sign, positive and negative sign sa unahan. Or pwede mong expand yan. The values of x can be positive 3 or negative 3. Ganun din yung sa mga nauna nating example kanina. Tingnan natin. So x here is not just positive 6, but also negative 6. 6 times 6 is 36. In the same way, negative 6 times negative 6 is also 36. So dagdagan natin ng plus minus sign. Maging dito. Eight times 8 is 64. In the same way, negative 8 times negative 8 is also 64. Maging kay square root of 49. 7 times 7 is 49. In the same way, negative 7 times negative 7 is also 49. So yun yung sinasabi sa atin ng unang property. That if k is positive, then your quadratic equation has two real solutions or roots. Isang positive and isang negative. Ano pa yung ibang property na dapat alam natin? The second property states that if k is 0, then x squared equals k has one real solution or root, which is 0. Kagaya to ng example natin kanina. K is 0 at ang nakuha nating solution ay, o root ay isa lang din, 0. Bakit isa lang? Bakit hindi pwedeng dalawa rin? Well, wala namang positive na 0, wala ring negative na 0. 0 is just 0. Kaya kapag dinefine mo yung set ng integers, nakabukod si 0. The set of integers include the set of all positive numbers and negative numbers and 0. Hindi siya kasama sa dalawa. That's what the second property means. How about the third property? This is going to be the last property that we will discuss. If k is less than 0, then x squared equals k has no real solutions or roots. What do you mean by k less than 0? Ano ba yung mga numbers na mas maliit pa sa 0? They are the negative numbers. So this also means that if k is negative, then your quadratic equation has no real solutions or roots. Kagaya yan nung example natin kanina, number 6. Negative si k, kaya wala tayong nakuwang sagot. No solution. Kasi yun yung sinasabi ng huling property. If k is negative, then your quadratic equation has no real solutions or roots. Dahil walang number na kapag minultiply mo sa sarili niya, ay magiging negative.